understand the consciousness connection. Like you and I are sort of interacting on physical mediumship, and I didn't realize that you said that they had interest in that as well. So it's like almost anything, and this is my impression, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that whatever it is, whether it's water, snow, physical mediumship, UFOs, there's an aspect of the U.S. government that's looking at, can we militarize this?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly the case, and their focus is ultimately militarization of it. Now it depends on who you talk about. When you say the American government, you're talking about 19 intelligence agencies with,
Yeah.
subdomains of each of them, and somebody mentioned, I believe, the DoD, Tiffany Mack, and so each of them have got a piece of this. A lot of it overlaps. The agendas overlap, but they have figured out, Brent, probably about the same time I think you got your downloads, that this is a consciousness thing. They have to understand it from consciousness up rather than from nuts and bolts down, from materialism and idealism down. They've figured that much out, but I'm not certain that I've had any hint. And I'm not the greatest conduit for these people, but I have enough interaction that I don't get the sense that they have solved this mystery, or as I said, 7 mysteries before. Physical mediumship is how I got into it, because I was requested to allow some of their active people to be involved in physical mediumship, and it was not something I really wanted to be involved in. And I said, well, look, I'll go to a seance and come back and tell you what's going on, kind of thing. And that was one of now 30 or 40, I suppose, that I've been in. And we always have a discussion afterwards, and they're looking at all kinds of things that they're hoping to pick up little hints of little pieces of things. They're really disconnected in a way. I mean, they're so materialistic based, they're so military based, they're so control based, that rather than sitting back and letting this stuff absorb and learn, they try to grab an idea and throw it into a bucket and do something with it. And it just isn't working out for them. But they also have some very, very bright people, like the Putoffs and the Greens of the world, that are saying to them, hold the horses there. We've got a bigger thing to take the challenge to, and there are better ways of going about this than trying to throw everything into a gun and shoot it. So they're learning slowly. Some of them are learning more quickly than the others. And I believe that one of the agencies that's really learning very quickly is the Office of Naval Intelligence. Boy, they'd hate to hear that, but that's the truth. The poor Navy hasn't got much to do these days. Float around the ocean and lob a few grenades at people and, shoot at Iraq every once in a while. And what else have they got to do? So they went into the intelligence business big time. And because of that, they brought in a lot of folks that are bright or outside their box. And they are slowly learning how to get to the point where, I hate to say this, but like most everybody here on this Zoom conference is. And if they're listening in, hi guys, good to see you again. But the thing I want to talk about, the hybrid thing, this is a really difficult subject, because first of all, we're hybrids. We're all Anunnaki hybrids. So they're hybrids of hybrids of hybrids. And it gets to be a situation where you have to look at each hybrid program as an individual faction. For instance, let's take the Zeta Reticuli, which is the common hybrid program that we're talking about. And we're talking about Greys who are taking human DNA and combining it with them in order to save their own species. They blew their planet up. And so they came barreling into our dimension and found this wonderful planet of ours full of humans with great DNA. They've been stripping that stuff out of us and recreating their race. So you have that issue. You have the hybrids that have been created that are human DNA and other alien DNA. And some of those are what are starting to filter into our society now, called precursors. The Yael ships, which were the Phoenix Light ships. The Yael have been flying around over trying to get our attention. Well, on board, they've got what they call the children. The children are DNA hybrids that are already filtering into the society, both as adults called adult precursors, and also as I believe one of the ladies said about the crystal children, and the indigo children, and the unusual children. And a lot of these people are the first of these. They're here to set a vibration, set a tone, to make it easier for the transformation that we're all starting to see happening, which is ultimately going to lead to face-to-face contact. And it's my opinion that that face-to-face contact is going to come with those hybrid children, and with the Yahyel as the second round, because they look a lot like us. They look almost exactly like us, as a matter of fact. It's very difficult to pick out. You'll pass hybrid alien precursor folks on the street, you won't even know that you've done it, unless you're really highly tuned to that type of frequency. And I know a few people that are, and they've said, "Oh, there goes one," and I just go, "There's a brunette." I mean, it doesn't register with me, but it does with a lot of folks. So we have to take a little bit of a step back and say, what hybrid programs are we talking about? What is trying to be accomplished? Is it the recreation of a civilization? Is it the precursors who are helping us toward the first face-to-face ET contact? And the people that have said that they think it is winding down, I'm more like the gentleman who said that he seems to think it's ongoing, and I think it is too. I think it's ongoing in this respect, though. I think we're getting more and more and more of these hybrid extraterrestrial humans who are now showing up in our societies, and I believe that they're going to be more dominant. We're going to find them more often. We're going to find that frequency more often, because the times are coming, and they're coming very quickly. I'd say 10 years, 15 at the most, before we have hard ET contact. It's a collective consciousness thing. We're getting there. We're not there yet. But we could get there a lot more rapidly than that. And the extraterrestrials understand this. The hybrid makers understand this. And they're part of helping us get to what a lot of people call ascension. I just call it simply, as you say, Grant, one in consciousness and all. Mm. And that's about what I have to say on that.
Hey, Walter, one question for you and for everybody there. My big question is, do you believe world governments are already on board with this issue from a big picture overview, meaning United States, Russia, China, all the different major governments have already made some sort of behind the scenes agreement on their awareness of this? Or do you believe this is every man for himself, that this is every government working on their own with the phenomena and deciding how, why, when, so on, so and so to let this out? Because my take, or at least my instinct, is that world governments have somehow made an agreement, because there's no province of like one geographical area to another where these experiences are happening. China could release everything. Russia could release everything. But if Russia releases everything, what does that do to the United States? So what is your and everybody's feeling on whether is there one big global watchdog over this, or is it a free-for-all?
I'm in agreement with you, Doug. I think there's an underground interaction between at least the major governments that says we have got to respect each other's territories here. And we have to respect each other in a way that any one of us could create a lot of problems for other governments, for our own governments, for the lying that's been going on since July of '47 with Roswell. So I think that there is that. I don't have any information, and I don't see anything that points directly to that interaction. I'm not a big guy that says it's the Bilderberg conferences, for instance, but I don't see how it can't be, Doug, just for the reasons that you say. There's just too much of the emphasis on this within each individual government. Now, as far as our interaction, heck, Grant, you had William Trinette on the other day. And William and Paul Hamden, the physical medium, have written a wonderful series of books about the Zeta population. And one of the things that the Zetas have come through and said that they have shared bilocation technology, what we call jump room technology, going back 10 or 15 years ago. Well, if we have a race sharing with the Central Intelligence Agency a technology which can take you from physical reality as we know it and put you into a simulated quantum environment which looks exactly like physical reality. You can't tell the difference from it. And they can make you come and go, and they do this in partnership with the intelligence agencies. Well, they've been doing that, thinking that they've done more than that and much less than that. It's just a natural consequence of that, of those transactions. So I think, Doug, to kind of rack your question again, is yeah, I think there are very significant underground cross-the-board communications. Again, at least with the major major governments. And if it's happening, I tell you where it might be happening, where it's the easiest place to cover it up. It's through corporate America. It's so the Northrops and the Boeings and the Lockheeds and yada yada and all those big players who sit in each other's boardrooms and turn each other's turnstiles with employees and come in and out of the DoD, and they're so intrinsically entwined in getting bids and making technology and bringing technology out at reasonable rates and at predetermined rates. I think that's where it's happening. And as you probably know, Doug, that's probably where all of the power needs are
I
anyway.
think Walter, you're onto it, because I think a lot of this has been put in private organizations, private corporations, so that when people come looking with Freedom of Information Acts and this and that, and why won't they release this? Why won't they release that? They don't have it to release. It's like a a shell game. They move it into the proper areas where it can't be gotten at, because you wouldn't even know who to ask. You would never even know, who am I going to direct this? So I agree with you. And I mentioned in the chat, I think the other reason is to prevent any kind of world accident by a misidentification of some sort of ship or being or something over a particular country, that we can't have this situation where we're mistaking a ICBM for something else. And to me, at the very, very top of security of all nations, there has to be some sort of agreement that we're on the same page with what's real-time Earth or the unknown. And that unknown can trick. I mean, look what these saucers and lights and so on have done over nuclear bases, shutting missiles down. And there's plenty of testimony on that from so many. So that, to me, it's a very, very critical thing. And I just can't imagine, if it's real at all, I can't imagine that the world governments are not on top of this.
Well, I agree with you. And I think you made a very good point about mysterious craft in the sky and how that has to be handled. And, we think about NORAD and all the other radio arrays that we have that to keep up with all this kinds of information. And I do know for a fact that there is a whole second tier of satellite information gathering that is strongly connected between major companies, and that they pass this information on much more quickly than they pass on when an airplane comes flying into a green screen at Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta. So I think you're right. I think there's a lot more communication. And the funny thing about it, though, is, Doug, is that with all of that communication and all that background stuff going on like that, and all these agreements and whatnot, going back to the idea of consciousness, they're still doggone clueless. Yeah. And it's really kind of funny if you stop and think about it. We can send people to the moon and other places, and yet we can't seem to get our intelligence agencies and our governments on the same page when it comes to just simple things like consciousness.
Yeah, and I want to make that point because Doug, you actually talked to Ron, who's considered